disclose any personal information of an individual, as this might infringe the rights of that individual and breach data protection rules. This is a formal committee meeting, Town Council committee meeting, and will be held using the agenda which the clerk has published. As with our usual meetings, members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak during the public open sessions, but will not be permitted to speak at other times. When you are not speaking, will you please mute your microphone, as this will help eliminate background noise. The normal procedure applies to the public open session. Members of the public may put questions or address council through the chairman pertaining to matters listed on the agenda. Each speaker will give their name prior to speaking, which will be recorded in the minutes unless that person requests otherwise. Each speaker will be allowed 1 3-minute slot, and there will be a warning after 2.5 minutes. Councillors cannot see members of the public, so if you wish to speak, can you please indicate by raising your electric hand within Zoom? Thank you.
There are no hands, Councillor Ramsey.
Sorry?
There are no hands to show anyone who would like to speak.
Right. I'm sorry with the volume. I'm not getting on very well with the volume today. You might need to speak up a bit, Sean. Fine. Have we had any apologies?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No. Okay. Do we have any declarations of interest in anything on the agenda? Yes, David. Councillor Elbow.
It's in the grants, which is 5D. As of this week, I am an allotment holder, and there is a grant being sought by the
right.
Allotment Association.
Councillor Russell.
Mine is also, I think it's 60 for the grants. My grandson is a member of the Air Cadets.
Right. Just going to try and do something. I can't get anything to happen with the volume at the moment. It's all very quiet. No, perhaps it's just a bad. Perhaps it's just a bad connection. I'm having difficulty hearing you all. Right, public open session to adjourn for a period of 5 minutes. Councillor Bond.
I'm saying I am a member of the Biggleswade History Society.
Right. Right. Public open session to adjourn for a period of up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or to address the council through the chairman pertaining to matters listed on the agenda. Do we have anybody wishing to speak? No. Minutes and recommendations of meetings. So we've now got the minutes of the F&GP meeting from the 17th of November 1920. Going to go through them for accuracy. It says page 4 and 5, but actually it's 1 and 2 as regards minutes. So page 4, minutes, anything there? Any discrepancies there? No. Page 5, any inaccuracies there? Right, thank you. Any matters arising from the minutes, please? Page 1 or 4. Page 2 or 5. No matters arising. Thank you. Are you content that I shall have sign these as an accurate record, please? Yeah? Right, thank you. We now have a report on the contracts database update.
Okay, Chair, is it okay if I introduce the subject?
Yes, please.
Okay, so if we could start with the asset register. Can I welcome Sean to do the first part of the introduction, and then I will contribute to the briefing. This is an oral update on the progress that we're making so far. So Sean, can I just pass the mic over to you to do the initial introduction to the subject, please?
Thank you very much, Peter. Good evening, councillors. Just to give you an update on the asset register project to date. Both copies of the asset register that we had on our systems, which was one from DCK and one that was already on BTC system, have been merged, and a significant effort has gone into verifying what information is current. The result of the audit has a direct timeline connection related to purchasing procedures both now and for the future. For example, recently purchased laptops have a 3 or 4 year shelf life, and the council will need to build the purchase timetable into annual budgets for non-capital assets. Barcode asset labels were purchased for the audit of assets across the office site, Drove Road garage, equipment stores, at the chapel and market sites. The asset register audit started on the 18th of January at the Town Council offices, and good progress is being made on identifying and labelling those assets. The Realm Manager will commence the asset register audit on Wednesday, the 20th of January at the Drove Road garage, and members will be updated regularly with updates on progress.
Can I also comment that members asked us to ensure that all of our capital assets, our land-based assets, were also obviously incorporated within the asset register, and that's also a task that we're incorporating into the asset register. This is going to take a period of time before it's a complete and accurate record. So this is a kind of live subject matter, and it's our recommendation that we do regular updates to F&GP and give you a sense of progress connected to this. So I'm very pleased with the progress that's being made so far, but there's still a way to go. So I would open it back to the chair for any questions, please.
Do any councillors have any questions they would like to ask, please? Councillor Fage.
So just to be clear, we have we already established then the process for when purchase orders are raised for something which would be considered an asset? Do we have that process established now, so that when we are making new purchases for new assets, they automatically become part of this asset register? So that's already established, and then it's just the cleanup of the rest of it. No, that sounds very promising. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Sean.
Yes, just to clarify, that process is most definitely in place. And indeed, everything that the council purchases consistent with financial regulations is matched up with an initial purchase order. So yes, yes. Would it be appropriate, Madam Chair, to move on to the contracts database?
Yes, if no one's got any more questions. Everybody happy with that? Contracts database, please.
I had a question, Councillor Ramsey.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Is there any plan as part of this to revalue any of the assets, in particular the buildings and the open spaces and recreation grounds, etc.?
Yes, there is. We have two options on the table, and I prefer the latter one. So as members are aware, we have some of our financial support is externalized, and DCK Accounting maintain those records and do artificial adaptations to our assets, cognizant of latest valuations. What we'd like to suggest, and we will do this going forward, is that we look to appoint a proper external chartered surveyor, where they'll be able to do a much more, I think, up-to-date and accurate assessment of the value of the buildings concerned and the land concerned. So that will be part of the ongoing review.
Any other questions, please? The next thing is the contracts database update. Can we have
Okay.
that, please?
We do, yes. Sean, would you like to do the introduction again, and I'll comment when necessary.
Again, so this is another contract that we are currently working on. Progress is being made on the project, and we are working on operationalizing the database, which would include making sure that we have copies of the contracts where relevant, focusing first on those contracts that have already expired. Our next steps will be assessing from a procurement perspective whether the current contracts offer value for money, and testing the quality of their offer and what impact they have had. The Town Clerk and Chief Executive will be working with support staff to develop a program that measures the effectiveness of current contracts, identifying and putting in place a procurement and vendor check policy in line with financial regulations of the Town Council, and depending on the value of the policy, whether we go out to tender for expired service contracts. The Town Council needs to be fully cognizant of its financial regulations throughout all these stages. The Assistant Town Clerk has created a draft Biggleswade Town Council service contract, which will be offered to all contractors as their contracts expire. Each contract will need to be individually adapted to the services specific to the vendor, and we will ensure that we have relevant quotations for a number of vendors, potential vendors, where we assess that those need to be changed.
So just to reiterate here, this is I think this is good news. The contracts database is making good progress, and for the first time, Biggleswade Council will offer its own terms to its external suppliers. The contract has been drafted by our Assistant Town Clerk. It will need to be varied according to the different contractors that we have in place. But I'm pleased to say that we have now a complete and tidy understanding of all the contracts that we have in place. It will mean that there will be a lot of work in regard to the issuing of our own standard terms. So there's a good way to go in regard to getting this into an acceptable place, that we have a mature contracts database.
Yes. For those councillors that were unaware, when I first discussed this with Peter, we were looking high and low for a contracts database, could not believe that we hadn't got one. And it turned out it was like a little heap of paper on the corner of the desk. And that was all we had. So I'd like to thank Sian very much for sorting this out, so that we've now got a visible database that we can look at and we have access to. And I presume this is a work in progress, and you're looking at it every month to look for expiry dates and things. Yes.
Well, it's an ongoing process right now. So we've been working on it for about 2-3 months solid, making sure that we're getting emails out to suppliers, asking for any signed contracts that they have on file, and checking those against our records.
Yeah.
So
what sort of response have you had then from those people?
Actually, I'd say there's very few I've had to chase where I have sent out requests. What we're doing is trying to make sure that we get one in, review it properly against the paperwork that we have, make sure that it's saved in correct folders, and it makes it easier for us to find things in the long run.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Peter, did you wish to speak?
Only in the sense, Madam Chair, to say that obviously we want to professionalise this as part of our ongoing modernisation of the council. So yes, I think we're making good progress connected to this, but there's a long way to go. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I have financial risk assessment, and that would be, I think, Philip Truppin. Are you going to introduce that?
Yes, I thought I was having trouble with my mute button. I've now managed to unmute. It wouldn't work when I clicked. Yes, good evening, councillors. Yes, this is part of the annual requirement under our audit regulations and good governance to look at the financial exposure of the council to risk. And members may recall that in the early days of my tenure within the council, I produced a report in November 2019 with some amendments that were fairly minor because I'd not been with the council very long, and I was still familiarising myself. I've made some, I won't say major changes this time, but some more significant changes. First of all, to put in a couple of headings which were not there before in terms of exposure to financial risk in terms of revenues. That's the sports facility fees and the car parking fees, which were not included at all. And obviously, I say obviously, we've had to take account of the significant impact of COVID on the activities of the council. And in that instance, I've proposed particular levels of risk and also the likelihood of risk. I think it's fair to say that in terms of the effect on the revenues of the council, although there's been a significant reduction in the income received as a result of COVID, the overall impact on the total sort of cash flow of the council, because the major income, of course, is from the precept, has not been as marked as, you know, it has to be catastrophic, as it were, and therefore I've actually put the impact generally as medium and not as high. If there was a significant loss, which really did impact more than a sort of, you know, 0.5% or something like that, then I think it would have been different. But that's basically the thinking behind the levels that I'm recommending in my report. And also attached, members will see, is the report that you adopted last year in 2019 on all of the headings that were then looked at. So it's really a question of looking at my representations, my recommendations, and the original document, and agree, hopefully, that the suggestions are significantly correct. It's in your hands, councillors.
Thank you. Has anybody any questions for Philip Chaplin, please? So are we satisfied that this risk assessment covers everything?
I've got my hand up, Councillor Ramsey.
I'll have to move you to the top corner, I think. Yes, Rob. Miss Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So firstly, I'd like to thank the Assistant Town Clerk for his report, I think, and for the proposed updates, particularly around the COVID-19. However, I think that there are some deficiencies really in this overall document, from predating the Assistant Clerk's time at the council. And I think we need to look at the overall framework and risk management scheme as a whole to make sure that it is actually fit for purpose and isn't just a tick box exercise to sit in a drawer for a year. I think of the actual, in terms of the framework itself, I think broadly speaking, as it's written, it's adequate for our needs. No doubt there could be some improvements, but I think it's adequate. But when we start looking at the table and the actual risk register itself, there's a few things, well, quite a few things I think that I've picked up, but I won't labour every single one of them. Just a couple I'll highlight, which is the risks describe what might go wrong, but they don't really give an indication of what the consequences might be of that happening. And that, I think, really is what's needed to quantify the impact. So Philip has given a good explanation of why he said medium rather than high for the COVID, but that information should be in the document. So it makes sense as a whole document, really. Another risk, for example, it describes cash banking. What actually is the risk around cash banking? Is it theft on the way to the bank to deposit it? Is it employee theft? Is it not handling and reconciling the money correctly? There's a whole host of things that could be the consequence of that, but the description currently as written doesn't really make that clear. Also, the management of risk and the action columns, they detail essentially what the mitigation is, but not particularly how that makes the risk acceptable, and how they mitigate and what how that prevents there being an unacceptable risk. So overall, I think the document's a really good starting point of where we are. I think it probably covers all of the areas that ought to be in there, but just not to the level of detail that actually makes it a useful document for us to actually manage our risk, as opposed to be that tick box exercise that I refer to. There are a number of members of council who are professionals in risk management, who do this for a living, have professional expertise in this area, who I think working with the officers could help make this a much better document, make it help put a process in place that allows us to actually use it to manage our risk, and then the officers take it forward from that point and keep it going. It shouldn't be something that relies on members every year, but I think it would be right for us to use the expertise that's available to do this right. So what I'll take guidance from the clerk in terms of timing, as to whether it's essential that we approve this today or whether we can defer it. But if we are able to defer it, my view would be that we should defer it until to enable our process to go through to actually do that that review and re-implement this properly. If we have to, from a governance perspective and an audit perspective, approve it today, then I think we need to do that with a very clear action to go forward and do that review in the short term, not waiting until 9 months' time or 10 months' time when we're preparing to bring it back again.
Can I ask you then, Councillor Pullinger, can I ask you if there's any particular thing that you think is really urgent and should be addressed immediately?
So, as I say, I personally, I would like to see it changed before we move forward. I understand, though, that you're then weighing up the risk of not having approved anything against the risk of what you're approving not being completely adequate. And so I'll take the clerk's guidance.
This is what I'm asking you, if there is any one thing that you think really does need to be addressed.
So I think if we are going to approve it today, then I've got some further comments on the amendments that Philip's put forward. But,
okay.
but nothing critical in that. I think it would prevent us from approving it if the advice is that we should approve it today.
Peter.
To respond to Councillor Pullinger, I think I would prefer to agree in principle, and I would stretch that in principle. I think there's opportunity to make this a lot better, and I would be very happy for officers to work with those councillors who have a degree of expertise in regard to risk management, and to quickly do that in the next few weeks, actually trying to get this a more robust document. So I think from that perspective, yes, we're agreeing it in principle, but we recognise that it can be made a lot better, and that the management of risk and the description of exactly what that risk is could be improved. So I think an in principle agreement, and then let's quickly in the next few weeks try and make it a more robust document.
So will you be able to present it at the next F&GP, or do you want to take it straight to council?
I take whatever members' preferences in regard to that.
Okay, thank you.
And could I come in, Madam Chair?
Yes, Philip, sorry.
I mean, you are, as a council, and I say you are because it's actually for the councillors to approve the document within each financial year. That is a governance requirement. This document will be asked for before the end of the financial year by the internal auditor, so that she can, and I'm sorry to use Councillor Pullinger's term, but tick her box. The risk assessment, as was pointed out by Councillor Pullinger, is really based upon a pro forma that I inherited, and have not sought to change it. And I'm very conscious of the fact that it does need some improvement, and what I've tried to do is sort of incrementally sort of tweak it, for want of a better term, not to just make it a tick box, but to try and reflect as far as we can the likelihood and the financial impact of the various risks. I do take the point, Madam Chair, that particularly the point about cash handling. Yes, so there should be something in there about the actual physical risk to people.
Okay.
What we've concentrated on here is the separation of of functions to ensure proper reconciliation, so that no cash goes missing, which of course is a minor risk, but it's still a risk that exists. I would feel that it would be appropriate for members, as the town clerk has said, to actually adopt this, even if it is in principle, at this stage. But if you want to make any major changes, that may take some time. And I'm, conscious of the fact that this would have to be completed in a very short time between now and basically the March meeting of council. And whether that's the right way to do it, or whether to defer this into early in the financial year where we have more time to actually do the work and bring something more significant back in the following financial year, is something for you to perhaps consider and decide.
Right. Councillor Fage.
I'd like to make a proposal then that we accept this document in principle, but with a very clear action probably Councillor Pullinger and myself to work with the clerk to revise this document. Won't repeat the points that have been made; they're all valid. But to revise this document, and I think probably in time for March might be a little bit ambitious, given the competing priorities that we have at the moment. So with a target perhaps of the next F&GP meeting in 3 months' time might be
about 3 months, right?
Might be a tad more realistic. It doesn't have to be an enormous exercise, but I feel March might be ever so slightly constrained. I don't know what Councillor Pullinger thinks, but I'd like.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Pullinger?
Yes, I'll second that proposal.
Right, okay.
I just would like to make a couple of comments. I mean, in terms of, I hope I made the point when I spoke before that I acknowledged that this was what you inherited, and that it isn't a reflection on you that this is what we've got. It's just a reflection on the various history of the council. And I think in terms of the use of this in an audit, actually, I think what we've got would satisfy the level of audit that we actually have as a council. What it doesn't satisfy to me is actually being a document that is useful to help us manage our risk. And that's what I want us to address.
This is why with your proposal, we don't want to be in a position where we say to the auditors, well, we have got one, but we're still working on it. We want to have one to say, yes, we have got one. And as always, we are looking, So I've got a proposal here.
Sorry, Councillor Ramsey, there was just one point I wanted to make on the specifics of the recommendations that I wanted. And this may be a separate action that we need to take outside of I don't think it's necessarily an amendment to the proposal, but it's around the change on page 9 around the governance document review and increasing that from 2 years to annually. I think there's also a point of the fact that there are so many documents at this point in time that, never mind every 2 years, haven't been reviewed since 2016, if not earlier. And so I think there's going to be a lot of effort needs to go in to review all of our policies. And I think that we just need to make sure that that's captured as something that we need to do.
Yes. But for this one, Peter, sorry.
I just want to reiterate that I would wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Pullinger in that respect. I think there's quite a lot of catch up to do in regard to properly reviewing all of the policies that exist. And indeed, in some cases, there are gaps that we need to generate our own policies, for instance, connected to procurement. So the only thing I would say is that that we do need to be cognizant of staff's overall ability to take on board some of these tasks within the short term. The main thing here is to recognise where the gaps are and to put something in place that adequately support that.
Okay. So, councillors, I've had the proposal that we accept this in principle, and that 2 councillors will work with the assistant town clerk to make sure that it's got more detail in it and is more appropriate, and we're looking at having it for 3 months' time. So all of those in favour of that, please. Yeah, there's nobody against. Thank you very much. Thank you for your input. Now we come to grants and sponsorships. And I have looked at where we are. We have a policy here from 2016. Yes, Councillor Knight.
Was muted. I was about to ask about the policy, but it sounds like you're covering that already, so maybe I could reply when you finish speaking.
Okay. Yes, I can see that this is from 2016 and there is more in it than just the appraisal of actual grants. I've looked through the people that have applied this year, and they seem to be the same as that have done it in previous years, and there hasn't been any problem. Sorry, Peter, did you want to interrupt?
I think other members have put their hand up first, but I'll let them speak and then I'll talk.
Anybody? Because Mark I've spoken to.
If I may speak.
Yes.
Yeah, so in relation to the policy, I don't know whether anyone on the call is aware of the status of that policy. Certainly, in preparing for this meeting, I stumbled across that policy on the website, and I've been unable to establish whether that policy has been adopted or not. So I hope we can find a way to proceed with reviewing the grants. But if we can get any guidance from members who may know better than I whether we do have a policy that it would. If that policy has been adopted, it is clear that some of the applications do not appear to comply with the policy as drafted. And if we decide to try and continue reviewing these grants as best we can, in the absence of a policy, I'd like to propose that we do make sure that we get a policy in place before people start to make applications for grants next year, please.
I have to say, this is the first time that I have seen this, so I presume it was done and just put in somebody's drawer. But
Ramsey, I did do a little bit of research through the minutes, and it appears that this was considered at Council on the 9th of August 2016 and was deferred to be reviewed by F&GP and then brought back to Council. That it has not been considered at any F&GP meeting since that time, and in the 12 months following that meeting of Council, it was not reviewed by Council either. I'm afraid I didn't have time to go through every single meeting.
No, that's fine.
But it appears that it's not been adopted formally as a policy.
Right. Okay then. So yes, Peter.
All I was going to say was to reiterate what Councillor Pullinger has been said, which is in my conversations with members and the research that we've done as officers, it's clearly not been adopted by Council. So there's a two-stage process here, bearing in mind that the document is near on 5 years old, in theory. Then firstly, we need to challenge and critique the document to make sure that it now adequately covers what we would want any grants policy to do. And then we need to put a process in place for officers to table a new grants policy and for them to be properly adopted by Council. In the meantime, we have some grant applications, and I think we need to be cognizant of something that doesn't exist as a policy statement, but we need to make some decisions on those grant applications, obviously.
Yes. And I was going to say that there are no different people on here. This is the usual amount. And one of the criteria is the usual people, and one of the criteria are how many people in Biggleswade will benefit, which is something we have always gone by. So I can't see anything here that might need to have a lot of consideration. It all appears to be the usual people, and we've always agreed with them having the grant. Sorry, Philip. Then I've got you.
Philip, you're on mute.
Philip.
Yeah, I'm having problems with my mute button.
Yes.
I'm clicking and it's not working. Yes, I mean, I think councillors, number one, talking about a policy in general, I think that there are two aspects to this, one of which is in a way already covered, as the chairman has alluded to. Essentially, most of these grants will come under what is known as Section 137, which is Section 137 of the Local Government Act 1972, where it states that all or some of the residents of the town must benefit from the grant. Therefore, you can't give a grant to an individual. So there is, if you like, the legal background to what grants should be given. There's also, if you like, sort of unofficial guidance from audit sources, which says that a grant that you give must be sort of commensurate with the benefit. Now that's not set in stone, but that is good practice. What I would also say is that in terms of a policy for the future, there is this two-stage. One is that it complies with the legislation and with sensible governance. But secondly, for members also to be able to have some idea of how you would judge the merit. And that, I don't think this is something which I would like to comment on, the merit of a particular grant in terms of whether you feel it's appropriate or not is another matter entirely. But as the chairman has said, all of these that have been applied for fit either under 137 or in the case of the community bus, the Ivor Sprinter, there's a particular, again, another clause, I can't remember which section it is off the top of my head, in the same act, which allows for community transport grants.
Councillor Russell and then Knight and Pullinger. Councillor Russell.
To say that I wasn't aware of this particular policy until it was brought to my attention recently, and I'm quite unhappy with some of the detail in it. We are trying to give grants to organisations in the community, charities in the community, and we shouldn't require them to jump through too many hoops. Now, obviously, what Philip has just been talking about the whole grant process being legal has to be done. But I particularly don't like the fact that the grants should be checked by clerks and maybe not put forward to councillors, because councillors, with the knowledge of the community that councillors have, should know what grants are available, even if the advice from a clerk is that it's not a very good idea to give that grant. So I'm fully in favour of going ahead as we've always done with the grants without this process in place for this year, and then, as has been suggested, sorting it out in the future. And I'd like to make that a proposal that we get a proper policy in place, possibly by early summer, May, June of this year, ready for the next grant round.
I'd like to second that, please.
Your second.
And if I may carry on with what I was going to say, so if I'm understanding this report correctly, 4 of the applications we have were not awarded a grant last year or the year before. So there are 4 new applications, I think.
Yes, but they are organisations that are known to us locally and I think have received grants, if not in 2019-20, possibly earlier than that. Councillor Pullinger, and then I'll put it to the vote.
Yeah, so I mean, I would like us really to have the opportunity to discuss and agree on each of the applications in turn. I know.
Yes, that is what happens.
Yeah, we will do that. That's fine. I'll reserve my comment.
That's the usual process then.
Yeah.
Councillor North.
I thought you were making a proposal that we accept them all because they're all in line.
No.
As long as we can do them all, that's fine.
Councillor North.
Chairman. Can I just clarify? Well, there's a whole list at the bottom here, and it says no grant application submitted 2020-21.
Yes.
Is that a misprint for 21-22?
Yes, probably.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that is. But because I've spoken to the assistant clerk,
okay,
and he assures me that all of the organisations that have received grants previously have been contacted by letter. And if there was no reply, and we knew them to be an organisation that usually works with the council, they have been followed up with a phone call to make sure that they received the document and to be asked if they wanted to apply for a grant.
Yeah.
So they haven't just been left off the end of the list. We have looked at them and offered them the opportunity. I think, as the assistant clerk said, it's possible that because of the COVID, they're not doing anything at the moment. So they feel they can't ask for a grant because they can't show what they're doing. Because of COVID, they're actually not able to do very much at all. So we'll have to wait and see what happens maybe next year. But they will stay on the list. Don't worry about that, Councillor North. Now, I have a proposal from Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Knight, that on this occasion we use the usual process and look forward to receiving an updated policy that's a bit more suitable for this one within the next, about 3 or 4 months, did you think, Councillor Russell?
I suggested by May, June.
By May or June.
Whenever there's a suitable F&GP meeting in the calendar.
So all those in favour of that, please. So that's unanimous. And now we need to have a look at these and consider them. The community agent actually doesn't come under a grant anymore. You will see it's in a separate line at the bottom. As, Philip knows about that because the SLA is to set up. I'd like to talk first of all.
Could I just come in about that?
Sorry, Philip.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I mean, the SLA hasn't actually been set up as yet. It's still work in progress. So you will have to, for this year, recommend that sum for the community agent, because of course, as you can see, it's beyond the limit, which is within the delegated power of this committee. But that would be a recommendation to council. But we are working on an SLA. It just, hasn't sort of materialised yet.
It's still in someone's pending tray, I expect. Councillor Russell and then Councillor Pullinger.
I don't understand why we have to make a recommendation to council on that, because council has already agreed the expenditure of that money. Yeah. So I would have thought that it can just proceed rather than making another recommendation to council. Right. We don't normally discuss things twice.
I thought that was to do with the green wheel, but I would stand corrected by members.
I think the two issues were discussed.
Happy to accept that. Thank you.
Councillor Pullinger.
So I was just going to make the same point as Councillor Russell, that we've already approved the that when it was brought to council to set it up for 3 years.
Peter, you're waiting to speak.
No, I'd reiterate again what Councillor Russell and Councillor Pullinger have already said. This matter's already been dealt with by full council. Yeah.
All right. I'd like to have a look at the first grant, just to say Autism Bedfordshire, because you see down here the Avenue Autism hasn't applied for a grant this year. And I know the two organisations were struggling to work. And looking at this, it would appear that the Avenue Club, or in the hall, the autism has been actually taken over now by Autism Bedfordshire. I think there's a question of whether or not they got enough specialists to cover the area. Autism Bedfordshire is the Central Beds one, but the one at the Avenue was based on volunteers. They did very good work and they worked as if they were staff, but actually that was a voluntary organisation. So I would guess that's what's happened there. So any money that we would normally give to the Avenue Club, I would be happy to give to the Autism in Bedfordshire, because it is a lot of Bedfordshire, Biggleswade people that use that facility. Any more comments on the Autism in Bedfordshire?
Second the award of a grant to Autism Bedfordshire.
Right. Are we agreeing that at 500? Yes. Bedford Daycare Hospice. They've said they haven't got any amount. I don't know. Requested £1,000. Are we happy with that? Just shout if you're not. Yes, Councillor Russell.
I'm a bit concerned that this is not so much for Biggleswade people. From what they say in their application, and I'm really a bit concerned about giving them as much as £1,000, and I'd like to see that amount halved.
So you're recommending 500?
I am, yes.
Right. Has anybody else got any comment to make, or are we happy?
I think those are the grounds. I think that's part of the reason we've given nothing in the past to them, even though they have applied.
It says 75 people. So what do you think? 500? Less than that? What do you think? Sorry, Councillor Albone.
I've recommended half of it, 500, Councillor Ramsey.
This is very difficult. It's obviously an organisation which is wider than the boundaries of Biggleswade, but Biggleswade people do benefit from it in the same way we normally give money to Keach, and that's a similar situation. So it's obviously going to help it's going to be of benefit to some Biggleswade people and some non-Biggleswade people, but that's the nature of the organisation. I think reducing it to £500 from 1,000 is wrong. So I would prefer to see the original amount given.
Any more comments? No, so we have one proposal of 500 and one proposal with the original amount of £1,000. So all those in favour of the original amount.
Can I just, so I just wanted to check a quick fact before I commented.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to support what Councillor Albone said, in that particularly the point he made around the fact that we support Keach, and we've been doing so for £1,000 each year, and that's for general running costs in terms of their children's services, whereas this request is for a specific support in a year of difficulty. And yes, people from outside of Biggleswade also benefit, but that's the case for Keach as well. So if we are quite happy in most years to give £1,000 to Keach, then I struggle to see why we should not support that amount for the Bedford daycare.
Right, it's just in previous years we haven't given any money to Bedford daycare, so there's nothing to look back on. So so you're supporting £1,000 then, Councillor Prunger, for Bedford daycare? Yes?
Yes.
Right. Madeline Russell, Councillor Russell.
Just like to point out that Bedford is a daycare hospice, Keach is a residential and has higher expenses, and gives support to people in as difficult circumstances as Bedford daycare, but you have to be able to go to Bedford to take part in their, you know, to have their support, which is why I'm saying I don't think they deserve as much as Keach. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel.
Okay, any more comments? Right. So the only way I can do this, I think, is to ask you for the amount you prefer. Bedford Daycare Hospice, which is based in Bedford, and I understand you have to travel to it, so it might not be quite as much benefit as Keach. All of those in favour of donating or granting Bedford Daycare Hospice £1,000? All those in favour of £500? That's 1, 2, 3, and me, so that's 4. So I guess that gives me the vote, the final vote. So I would make that £500 then. The next one is for Biggles FM, and this is the amount that we give them every year. Is there anybody want to comment on this? Councillor Russell.
Support them because they do give a big service to the community locally, and they do also support the council, particularly at the Christmas fair. And I think we could actually use Biggles FM more as they're growing into a bigger organisation to put forward town council news and town council messages that we need to get to the public. So I think this would be a good use of grant money. So I'd recommend the whole 1850.
Any other comments?
No.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, so I again will broadly support this application. I do question how many residents benefit. It says all Biggleswade residents. I'd actually like to understand the audience size, and I don't know whether that's the sort of information that the radio station have, because I genuinely don't know whether 50 people listen regularly or 10,000. So maybe before next year there would be the opportunity to ask a representative of the station to come and speak to council or the committee, perhaps, so we can have a more in-depth understanding of what they do, particularly because this is an example of an organisation whose application probably wouldn't comply with the requirements, at least of the draft policy we have. So that's something we may want to consider in the context of how we revise that policy. But as I say, I think for this year, definitely happy to support it.
They do give a lot of information out on local events and local advice, and particularly if there's any flooding or any emergencies or road. So they are very much on the ball with what is happening in Biggleswade and the surrounding area. And it's quite useful to listen to them, I have to say. But yes, Councillor Bond.
They are actually listened more than you expect. My wife Marilyn once gave an interview to them regarding work at Shortmead and such. And we had many, well, 2 or 3 people from Erlensley got in touch to say they'd been listening. So it was quite remarkable. So I think it goes wider, as you said. We've used them several times for a long time. They've been actually quite useful to the town. But if you want some details from next year, there's no harm in actually asking. I don't see really why they have to come to the council. They can just send the information in.
Any more comments then? No, so we'll give them the 1850 for that then. Now, Biggleswade allotment holders, and it says it benefits all Biggleswade residents. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I have some concerns about this application. So the first observation is obviously we own the allotment site, and my understanding is the group that are looking to establish this community facility with the use of some sort of container. I'm not sure whether they've sought permission to have a container on our site. I have particular concerns about the suitability of a container and how it would be secured in a location such as the allotment. You could imagine putting a padlock on it, and you could imagine it would be potentially destroyed very quickly by someone who may feel there's something of value in there. So I also question whether this is the kind of facility that the council should provide rather than a group of allotment holders. So I have a few concerns. I'm not quite sure what the best thing to do this evening is. I certainly feel further discussion needs to be had between this group and council officers before we can.
I'm not
really
sure.
agree.
When you look at this, I agree. You're not sure whether this money is for the entire cost or whether they're asking for a contribution towards it. Councillor Russell.
To propose that we defer this for officers to talk to the allotment holders group and involve perhaps Councillor Foster as chairman of PLOS and find out exactly why they want to do this and how we can support them. But given that we've had all the problems that we've had with allotments recently, and there have been demands for the allotment fees not to be increased for the next year from the allotment holders, I think there's a lot going on there, and we should have some sort of meeting with representatives of the allotment holders. Maybe Mr. Ingray, who did this, and the man who is chairman, who came to a recent council meeting, to see how we might help them and take this forward. But I don't think we should be awarding something as a grant tonight, and I'd make that as a formal proposal.
Yes, and I know there has been discussion in the past as to the siting of this particular type of thing, and that was coming a bit, whether how near the path it should be and one thing and another. So I think a meeting with them to discuss exactly what they've got in mind would be a good idea. Will somebody undertake to contact them?
I'll second it, Councillor.
You'll second that, right? Thank you very much. Everyone else in favour of deferring this until we've got more detailed information? All right, thank you very much. Now, will Sian be writing to them to say that we need more information? How does that work, Peter?
I'll take that on board, Councillor Ramsey. We'll deal with that as an action item. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much. ATC Squadron. They've asked for 1,000. They got 1,000 last year. Councillor North.
Yes, I would agree with what they're asking for, but one point I would make is that they're going up from 500 to 1,000. I mean, they probably are suffering with COVID. Well, the organisation is probably under stress because of COVID, put it that way. But what I would say is they should get the same as the Sea Cadets, which is also a very valuable organisation for the youth in the town. Although they didn't last.
1,000.
Oh no.
So that went up to 1,500 last year.
Yeah, I don't know why.
And the squadron went up to 1,000. Are you suggesting that we give both of those organisations £1,000 or give them both 1,500?
Well, as we reduce the other one by 500, we could give them both 1,500 actually.
Right.
Yes, I propose.
I don't think we can give them more than they've asked for, Councillor North.
Pardon?
I don't think we should give them more than they've asked for. That sort of seems a bit.
Well, we've done it.
I need to come in here, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
You really can't give people more than they've applied for. That is completely outside of the remit.
All right.
Well, we should give them both. I think we should give them both the same. That's the point, though. I think give them both 1,000. Then.
Give them both 1,000.
No, hang on.
Councillor Page.
Sorry. They applied for a certain amount of money based on how much their organisation needs. The Air Cadets have applied for £1,000. It doesn't seem like there's any problem with that. I'd like to propose they go for 1,000. Let's consider the Sea Cadets when we get to them.
You want to do them separately? Because quite often we take
I'll second that.
groups together. Okay, then. So all in favour, please, unless you are giving 1,000. Yes, Councillor Pullinger.
I was voting in favour.
Oh, I was just saying, is there any objections? Is there any objection to us offering £1,000 to the Air Force cadets? No. Right. Okay. Biggleswade Good Neighbours Scheme. They've asked for £500.
Move it.
Move it, right. Biggleswade History Society. Yeah, we're being recorded, so I was going to make a joke, but I won't. So they want £750. Anybody? Councillor Russell?
I think we should give them it because they're doing a valuable service for the community. They would like at some stage to have some sort of museum facility in the town,
Yes.
to put some of their archive on display, and that's not something that we've been able to do for them. They've been talking about it for quite a number of years. And the History Society is helpful with some of the planning applications, and in particular some of the work that's had to be done for Land North. So I think we should support them with this £750.
I would say also that they were tracing the families and the history of the people that the armed forces from Biggleswade in the 2 World Wars, and they had folders on all of them. And I was at a meeting and somebody had been trying to trace one of their relatives, and they were able to have this folder and look through and see everything that the son and the brother had been through. And it was really quite a moving moment. And I was really pleased that we're supporting the History Society for people to know what's happened to their families. I think it's a wonderful thing that they do. So I'm really pleased with that. Thank you. Biggleswade Sea Cadets. Councillor Russell.
Suggestion. I would just like to suggest that the Sea Cadets actually have a larger number of cadets, quite a lot larger number of cadets than the ATC, and therefore it makes sense to give them the 1,500 that they're asking for. There's similar requests from both organisations, but it's a larger number of cadets with the Sea Cadets.
Right.
Second that.
Second that. Everyone happy with that? Right.
Yeah.
Biggleswade United Football Club. I've no idea what the £310 is for. Councillor Pullinger.
So they're asking for for support towards their operating costs in terms of pitch maintenance. I mean, I'm not going to make a proposal. I'd rather gauge other members' views, but I would say that if the policy that isn't adopted was in place, that this certainly wouldn't be in line with it.
Is it for maintenance, or is it specifically for a piece of equipment, do you think, or lighting?
Pitch maintenance is the way it's described.
Pitch maintenance. Well, this policy wasn't enforced when we received.
It's not enforced, so it is. We shouldn't feel bound by it at this point. But it's,
no. Do you have contacts in the football club?
Ground, in particular, the ongoing maintenance of the pitch.
Councillor Pullinger, do you have contacts in the football club?
No.
No, does anybody? Yes, Councillor Russell.
We do have a relationship with Biggleswade United over their ground, and I think this is something else that could be dealt with outside of this meeting. £310 for pitch maintenance sounds a funny amount, and since we want to do what we want to do with our public realm team, maybe this is something that we could organise with them in a different way. So I'd like to suggest that the clerks have a meeting with Biggleswade United and see whether there's a way forward there.
I'd second that.
Yes. Would you be happy for that course of action, Peter? Yes.
I would be, yes, thank you.
Yes, okay. So all those in favour of deferring this until a detailed meeting can be had to find out. Yes, Councillor Page. You're all in favour? Right, okay. Thank you. So that's nothing there then. Carers in Bedfordshire. Any comments from anybody?
Move £2,000.
Yes?
Second
Those in favour, yeah?
Nice to
Okay.
give them all and some claps.
Central Bedfordshire Swim Squad. Councillor Knight.
I have some concerns over this, but I'd like to hear other members' views as well. So looking at the application, so the summary suggests 30 residents of Biggleswade benefit, but the application talks about 30 athletes benefiting, and that 28% of the squad members are residents of Biggleswade. So I question whether that's really 9 residents of Biggleswade benefit rather than 30. But I note this club appears to be aimed at, I think they're described as elite athletes. So I just question the level of benefit this provides to the community, and obviously it's the first time that they've applied. So I think maybe it deserves a bit more consideration.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Yeah, carry
Okay.
on.
So I mean, I made the same observations as Councillor Knight in that it appears that there's potentially 9 residents of Biggleswade that benefit. I think it's the feeder club. It talks about having feeder clubs with 535 swimmers. Now, I think if the feeder club would likely be a Biggleswade-based club, which would definitely be benefiting the residents of Biggleswade. I think a elite swim squad, county level swim squad, I struggle to see really what benefit it has to the community, especially as it's not really very specific over what they want the money for. It's sort of a shopping list of things that it might go towards, but it's certainly not
Not a project or anything.
not a project. And they talk about things like equipment such as heart rate monitors, but it doesn't say how many of those, how much they cost each. So it's just, I think there's not really enough information here to make me comfortable supporting it.
All right. Any other comments on that? No. Right. So what do we feel about this? Do we feel that we should give them anything at all, or half, or a quarter, or so? Has anybody proposed that we give them nothing? Or Councillor Fage?
I'll propose nothing.
We propose nothing. Have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
I'll second that. Is everyone all right with that? Yeah. Okay. East Beds Community Bus, the Ivor Sprinter.
I'd propose 750. I think they provide a valuable service.
Yes, I think they do. Yes. Yes. They do have people that would otherwise not get out and about at all. And I know they've got this new bus with the drop curb, and it's got the window in the side where the driver is, so he can see if there's any cyclists. But there is a rumour that one passenger has a little ride out every week, and then she doesn't get off the bus. She waits till it comes back, and then she gives the driver a piece of chocolate and says, "Thank you for taking me out," which is rather nice. But I think, chocolate apart, I think it is appreciated by the community, because for a lot of them, that's the only access they have to other places. So thank you for that. Here to Listen, they've applied for £1,000. They were awarded £400 last year. How do we feel about that? Councillor Russell?
A little bit concerned about this idea of purple bands, so that youngsters will wear them to show that they're willing to listen to other youngsters' problems. I suppose it's all that safeguarding training that I've been through in the past. I'm not sure that we should be asking young people to deal with other young people who have got emotional problems. So I just don't quite like the sound of this. We have supported Here to Listen in the past, not just last year, but before. But that was not on the understanding that it was other young people who were doing counselling. It was the organisation itself with professional people. So I don't really want to give them any money at all for this particular scheme. So I'd like to propose that we don't.
Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Fullerton. So we have a proposal here that we, because of the use they're going to put the money to, we feel that there's safety and safeguarding issues. So is there anybody else got any comments to make, or can I just ask if you're all agreed that this time round we don't make a grant? Everybody's okay. Councillor
I was going to say, I recall we offered them £400 last year for part of that service. I don't really know that we can put strings attached to offer the same amount of money for a similar cause, right?
No, I think last time it was to do with premises as well, if I recall. Yeah. And I don't really, yeah. Okay, then, so that's nil for them. Right, Keach Hospice Care.
Move 1,000.
Second.
Seconded that. All in agreement? Right, thank you. Magpants Air Ambulance.
Proposed £536.
Seconded.
Everyone in favour? Yeah?
Yep.
Ivor Valley School. What does anybody feel about that? It's for special needs, isn't it?
I'd like to propose the 800. I think it's for a specific piece of equipment which will be of benefit to the young people that attend the school, and so yeah, I think that is worthy of our support.
Seconding that? Yes. All those in agreement then? Everyone all right with that? Right, thank you. So that's the Ivor Valley School. That's fine. So I'm looking at this list. Biggles FM were fine. The allotment holders, we want to have a meeting with them. The ATC are all right. We're not giving any money to the United Football Club until we've had a further meeting with them. And we don't think that the swim squad needed to have a grant. And it's the same with Here to Listen. I don't think I've missed anything out. So are you all happy with what's happened this evening with the grant applications? Yes? All I need to do now is find the agenda.
Just a public open session, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's got caught up with the other stuff, I think. So is there anybody, have we got any members of the public in? I don't think we have we?
Alison and a Paul Howe.
Right. Okay, thank you. We're now having a public open session for anybody that wishes to comment on anything to do with the council. Anybody like to stand up and speak on it, please? You need to give your name as per usual. No, I can't see anybody.
Paul Howe is asking to speak, Councillor Ramsey.
I can't see. Oh, I see. Right. Okay, fine. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Howe.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Deputy Mayor for sorting out these refuse sacks for me. I've had a bit of feedback on it. They was very appreciative of actually being able to pick them up. A lot of people said it's a splendid idea. So just like to thank Councillor Fage for sorting that out for me. Thank you. I'm sure the public appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
Thank you to the staff for coming back quickly on the refuse as well. You're welcome.
Right, if no further business, then I declare this meeting closed. And we will reconvene, or some of us will reconvene at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.